Let's go!
Protecting you, villains.
A face appears in silver light, strong, symmetrical, sculpted by survival. Her eyes, pale as African morning skies, hide a history that no lens can soften. This is Charlize Theron, Oscar winner, action icon, producer, philanthropist, mother. To the world, she is grace forged in steel, a woman who conquered Hollywood's kingdom and then burned its map. But beneath that cinematic perfection lies a story of loss, violence, and rebirth. A life where beauty became both weapon and wound. Charlize wasn't just another actress chasing fame. She became a symbol of transformation itself, the living proof that elegance can coexist with brutality, that a woman can carry the weight of trauma and still walk in couture. Yet for all the lights that followed her, few have glimpsed the darkness that shaped her. Behind the glamour of Mad Max Fury Road and the prestige of Monster beats the heart of a child who once watched her mother pull a trigger to survive. Behind the red carpets and Dior gowns lives a woman who still carries that echo, a reminder that no success, no award can rewrite the sound of gunfire at midnight. So tonight, as the camera pans across decades of stardom, we step behind the curtains, to the farm in South Africa where it all began, to the nights of fear that hardened her resolve, to the silent spaces where she learned that power, real power, is born from pain. Charlize Theron's life is not just a Hollywood success story. It is a cinematic elegy about survival. The kind of story that reminds us that even angels of the screen are carved from tragedy.
Early life and family background. The farm, the gun, and the girl who wouldn't break. She was born on August 7, 1975, in Benoni, South Africa, a mining town east of Johannesburg, where the dust hung thick and the nights carried whispers of danger. Her parents, Gerda and Charles Theron, owned a farm on the outskirts, where life was hard, the air smelled of metal, and the world outside their fences was charged with tension. From the start, Charlize was different, restless, imaginative, sensitive. Her mother saw a spark in her, an artist's curiosity inside a child who loved the land but longed for something beyond it. Her father, a construction worker and pilot, was both loving and volatile, a man haunted by alcohol and frustration. Home could shift from laughter to shouting in a breath. South Africa in the late 1970s was a country divided by apartheid and fear. Yet inside that fragile home, an even deeper war was brewing. Charles's drinking worsened. Nights grew unpredictable. Charlize learned early the art of silence, how to listen for danger in the pauses between footsteps. At 13, she was sent to a boarding school in Johannesburg to study ballet. Movement became her language. Dance was freedom, discipline, escape. She dreamed of joining a company in Europe, her mother cheering from the sidelines, saving money she didn't have. But fate had other plans. One night in June 1991, when Charlize was 15, the violence that had shadowed their home erupted. Her father, drunk and armed, threatened to kill them both. Cornered, terrified, Gerda Theron fired in self-defense. He died instantly. Police ruled it justifiable, but there are no verdicts for grief. For Charlize, that night split her life in two, before the gunshot and after. She has rarely spoken of it, except to say, "I know what it means to grow up with addiction and fear." The trauma became a silent companion, an uninvited ghost that followed her from the African plains to the Hollywood hills. Yet from that darkness rose resilience. Gerda, strong and unflinching, told her daughter, "You can't let this define you." So she didn't. She carried her pain like fuel. Within months, she left South Africa, a teenager with a broken past and an impossible dream, to dance in America.
First steps, struggles, the girl at the bank counter. The shot opens on a bus window streaked with rain. 17-year-old Charlize stares out at Los Angeles, wide streets, louder dreams, and a loneliness that smells like gasoline and possibility. She has a single suitcase, a handful of photographs, and a dancer's spine that's beginning to ache from exhaustion. She had first stopped in New York, enrolling in the Joffrey Ballet School, chasing the rhythm that once gave her peace. But months in, a knee injury shattered that dream with the precision of fate. Doctors told her the words no dancer wants to hear: "You'll never perform again." The future she had built around movement collapsed in one sterile exam room. Broke, devastated, and too proud to return home, she began modeling. Europe, Milan, Paris, runways and flashbulbs, glamorous but hollow. Behind each photograph was a young woman pretending to be confident while wondering who she was without dance. Modeling paid the bills, but starved the soul. She knew she was built for something else. She just didn't know what. In 1994, she flew to Los Angeles, a city built on chance. She lived in a cheap motel on Hollywood Boulevard, surviving on minimal cash her mother sent from South Africa. When the money stopped, Charlize walked into a bank on Melrose Avenue to cash her last check from a modeling job, only to be told it couldn't be processed because it was from a foreign account. Desperate, she argued, her accent thick, her voice trembling. Then, from the back of the line, a man stepped forward, John Crosby, a talent manager. He had watched the entire scene. He told her, "You have the kind of face this town remembers." It sounded like a cliché, but for Charlize it was a lifeline. He gave her his card. That chance encounter, one angry moment at a bank counter, would rewrite the trajectory of her life. Soon after, Crosby began sending her to auditions. She had no training, no connections, no understanding of how Hollywood worked. Casting directors dismissed her after one sentence. Her accent was too strong, her beauty too obvious. She was offered roles that objectified her, then criticized for taking them. At night, she studied English with a tape recorder, practicing American inflections until her tongue ached. By day, she waited tables, took acting classes, and sent out headshots that went unanswered. Every no pressed on her chest like the weight of all the miles she had traveled from Benoni. Yet beneath that weight, a stubborn fire refused to go out. She once told a friend, "I didn't come this far to watch other people live their dreams." Slowly, bit by bit, the girl at the bank counter began transforming into an actress. But destiny, true cinematic destiny, was still waiting behind the next audition door. Breakthrough moment. Becoming the monster. The year was 2003. After a decade of minor roles and supporting parts, The Devil's Advocate, The Cider House Rules, The Italian Job, Charlize Theron had become a familiar face, but not yet a force. She was often cast as the blonde perfection of the male fantasy, her talent quietly underestimated beneath beauty. Then came a script that terrified her, Monster. It told the story of Aileen Wuornos, a real-life prostitute turned serial killer executed in 2002. No studio believed the role could or should be played by Charlize Theron. She was too glamorous, too model-like, too safe. But Theron saw something in Wuornos that few could stomach. A reflection of society's cruelty toward damaged women, a mirror of her own buried rage and resilience. She threw herself into the role with monastic devotion. She gained 30 pounds, wore prosthetic teeth, shaved her eyebrows, and studied hours of interview footage. More than that, she absorbed the pain, how abuse corrodes innocence, how love turns into survival. Director Patty Jenkins later said, "She disappeared. I didn't see Charlize for months. I only saw Aileen." When Monster premiered, the transformation stunned audiences. The performance wasn't imitation, it was possession. Critics called it one of the most fearless performances in modern cinema. In 2004, Charlize Theron won the Academy Award for Best Actress, standing on the Dolby stage, shaking as she dedicated it to her mother, the woman who had taught her to survive. The camera zoomed in on her tears, but what the world didn't see was the private storm beneath them. Fame had finally arrived, but it carried ghosts. The role had forced her to reopen wounds from her own past, violence, fear, the desperate need for control. For months she couldn't sleep. The line between character and self blurred into something fragile. Still, Monster changed everything. Overnight, she went from beautiful face to artist, from model turned actress to one of the most respected performers of her generation. Studios now courted her. Directors sought her intensity. But Charlize had no intention of being anyone's muse. She wanted authorship. She founded Denver and Delilah Productions, determined to tell stories Hollywood ignored, stories about women who fought, who broke, who bled. From there came a career renaissance. The icy assassin in Aeon Flux, the wounded miner in North Country, the vengeful imperator in Mad Max Fury Road. Each role a fragment of her inner geography, grit, grace, and the constant shadow of the past.
Peak career and achievements. The reign of fire and frost. Cue the sound of camera shutters, red carpet flashbulbs, and a slow orchestral swell. By the mid-2000s, Charlize Theron had become Hollywood's paradox, both its golden statue and its disruptor. The face that once sold perfume now carried protest. The beauty once weaponized by studios now became a shield she turned on the system itself. After Monster, she refused to play safe. In North Country, she embodied a single mother taking on a mining corporation's sexual harassment, a role that earned her another Oscar nomination and turned her into a symbol of cinematic courage. She followed with Young Adult, Mad Max Fury Road, and Tully, films that dissected female rage, exhaustion, and the quiet rebellion of imperfection. When Mad Max Fury Road thundered across theaters in 2015, audiences expected chaos and chrome. What they got was Furiosa. Shaved head, oil-streaked face, eyes like burning steel. She was not the sidekick, she was the engine.
Director George Miller called her the heart of the apocalypse, and for millions of women, she became a new archetype, the warrior who rescues herself. Theron's evolution wasn't just on-screen. Behind the lens, through her company Denver and Delilah, she produced stories that Hollywood often buried. Atomic Blonde, Mindhunter, The Old Guard, a body of work built on female agency and fractured morality. She began mentoring younger actresses, pushing for pay equity, and speaking openly about abuse and gender politics in an industry still reeling from its own silence. Awards came: Golden Globes, BAFTAs, the Time 100 list. Yet the camera never fully captured her duality. On-screen she was fire, off-screen frost, analytical, reserved, almost guarded. Her co-stars described her precision as surgical, every movement, every pause, designed. To some it was perfectionism, to others it was survival. There's a line in Bombshell where her character says, "I'm not the story here." But Charlize Theron always was, not because she courted headlines, but because she embodied the modern contradiction, a woman who conquered Hollywood without letting it consume her. Fade to black, dissolve into softer piano music. Her reign wasn't measured by trophies, it was measured by control. The kind she had once lost, now reclaimed, frame by frame.
Personal life and challenges. The silence between roles. The screen dims. The red carpet fades to an empty living room bathed in afternoon light. Charlize Theron's private life has always been an enigma, a carefully drawn curtain behind which real battles unfolded. She never married, never subscribed to Hollywood's fairy tale script. Instead, she built a family on her own terms, adopting 2 children, Jackson and August, and raising them without spectacle. In interviews, she calls her motherhood her most grounding role. But behind that calm are memories that shaped her solitude. The violence she witnessed as a teenager. Her mother's self-defense killing of her abusive father left scars that fame could never anesthetize. "You don't walk away from something like that unchanged," she once admitted. "You just learn to build around it." That architecture of resilience came at a cost. She spoke candidly about loneliness, about how relationships faltered under the weight of independence. Rumors swirled about romances with co-stars, breakups, silences, but she rarely confirmed anything. For Charlize, privacy wasn't mystery, it was protection. She struggled, too, with depression after certain roles. "You can't live inside that darkness without bringing some of it home," she said of Monster and North Country. Therapy, meditation, and time away from the camera became her form of recovery. She trained obsessively for her action films. Atomic Blonde left her with cracked teeth and bruised ribs, not out of vanity, but discipline. "Pain reminds me I'm still here," she joked once, half smiling. Even in her activism, HIV/AIDS awareness in Africa, gender-based violence campaigns, and global humanitarian work, you sense a woman atoning not for guilt, but for survival. Each cause is another form of storytelling, another way to reclaim narrative from chaos. Later years, decline, the quiet after the storm. By her late 40s, Charlize Theron had become what few stars managed to remain, relevant by choice, not by demand. But fame, like all light, begins to flicker when the years accumulate and the industry's obsession with youth sharpens its teeth. For Charlize, the camera was no longer an accomplice, it was a mirror. a reminder of time's quiet erosion. She spoke with a disarming honesty about aging in Hollywood. "It's brutal," she said. "You start disappearing before you're ready." Her words echoed through an industry built on illusion, shaking the facade of eternal glamour. In interviews, her tone grew more reflective, the cadence slower, her laughter tinged with irony. She was no longer chasing approval, she was defining endurance. Yet the quiet came with melancholy. Roles once written for her age bracket were rewritten younger. Studio calls grew fewer, more cautious. In private, she admitted that scripts offering women depth were as rare as forgiveness in this business. Her beauty, once her weapon, now became her contradiction again, praised, commodified, then penalized for lasting too long. Aging gracefully was the new performance, one that demanded serenity where rebellion once roared. And while she embraced the natural lines of her face, you could sense the ache of someone who had fought too long to be seen, only to vanish when she finally felt whole. Behind the scenes, her mother, Gerda, her anchor through every storm, grew older too. The woman who once pulled the trigger that saved them both now battled frailty. That shift, that inevitable reversal of care, brought Charlize a new kind of heartbreak, the slow decline of the only constant love she ever fully trusted. There were still films, yes, the old guard too, Fast X, producing projects for emerging voices, but the frenzy was gone. The hunger that once burned through her 20s and 30s had cooled into something softer, something almost fragile. "I don't have anything left to prove," she said quietly in one late-night interview, "but I still have things to feel." Sometimes, between takes, crew members noticed her sitting alone, scrolling through photos of her children, smiling faintly. The actress who once embodied monstrous despair and apocalyptic fury now found her peace in the mundane, bedtime stories, school lunches, the rhythm of real life that fame never gave her. The tragedy wasn't a fall. It was the stillness after the ascent, the realization that even the strongest flame must dim to reveal the woman behind it.
Legacy and symbolism. The woman who became her own revolution. Charlize Theron's legacy isn't measured in awards or beauty campaigns. It's in the boundaries she broke and the silences she forced the world to confront. She was the model who refused to stay ornamental, the actress who made rage poetic, the producer who turned pain into purpose. She redefined the female archetype in cinema. Before her, women could be beautiful or brutal, rarely both. After her, they could be everything. In every role, she carried the ghost of her past, the frightened girl from Benoni, the daughter of survival, and transmuted it into art. Monster was her confession. Mad Max was her rebellion. Tully was her truth. Young actresses today, from Florence Pugh to Anya Taylor-Joy, speak of Theron's fearlessness as blueprint, not perfection, but permission. She gave them the courage to inhabit flawed women, to weaponize vulnerability, to stand tall in the industry storm and still say no. Beyond cinema, her humanitarian work, especially through the Charlize Theron Africa Outreach Project, built schools, funded HIV prevention, and protected thousands of at-risk youths across South Africa. It wasn't charity, it was atonement, a vow to the child she once was,
No one should have to survive what I survived to be heard. Critics call her the last great chameleon of Hollywood. But legacy is more than transformation. It's impact. And Charlize's impact runs deep, in culture, in activism, and in the very texture of modern womanhood on screen. She never wrote an autobiography, never sought to script her own myth, yet her story has become one, the tale of a woman who built an empire from trauma, then learned to step away from its throne.
Closing reflection, the curtain falls. The frame opens on an empty soundstage. Dust floats through the light. A single chair sits beneath a fading spotlight. The echoes of past performances linger like ghosts rehearsing their memories. For half a century, Charlize Theron lived in front of lenses that wanted to define her, first as beauty, then as power, finally as proof. But what remains when the makeup fades, the applause ends, and the scripts stop coming? What remains is the woman who learned to build herself from ashes over and over again. Every great story has a symmetry, a circle that closes where it began. Charlize's began with violence and silence, a home filled with fear, a girl watching her mother end her father's rage to save them both. That moment carved a scar into her soul, one she spent her entire life translating into art. Every scream in Monster, every tear in North Country, every glare in Mad Max, they were echoes of that night. But what began as survival became something else. It became creation, expression, liberation. Now, at 50, Charlize stands at a strange intersection between relevance and reflection, legacy and loneliness. She still commands rooms, but the rooms feel quieter. She still walks red carpets, but sometimes her smile lingers too long, as if remembering someone who isn't there. The Hollywood lights that once blinded her now merely illuminate what time cannot erase, that the cost of strength is solitude. Her story is not one of downfall, it is of endurance, of what happens when a woman refuses to let her pain become her prison. Yet endurance has its own tragedy. It asks for everything and gives little peace in return. Charlize has learned that survival does not always mean healing. Some wounds do not close, they learn to breathe. There's a haunting honesty in her words now. In one interview, she said softly, "I'm proud of what I've done, but I'm still figuring out who I am when I'm not doing." That sentence, fragile, hesitant, human, may be her truest performance. The act of being without the need to perform. Her daughters, Jackson and August, have become her grounding. They know her not as the icon, but as the woman who burns pancakes, forgets school forms, and laughs too hard at bedtime stories. Perhaps that's where the real ending lives, not in the glamour or the gold, but in the quiet rediscovery of tenderness. The camera moves closer now. The spotlight dims, leaving only a silhouette. Charlize seated in that chair, looking toward the empty theater seats. A faint smile crosses her face, not the smile of triumph, but of release.
Epilogue. The Shadow and the Flame. The scene opens in grayscale. Smoke curls through the light of a dressing room mirror. Pearls rest beside a fading photograph. A soft jazz record plays, a voice from another time. Charlize Theron. The name glows faintly in the mirror bulbs, the way it did for every star who came before her. In another era, she might have been Garbo, mysterious, untouchable, a woman sculpted by longing. But in this world, she was something rarer, a star who refused to lie about the darkness. Fame, after all, is just another illusion, a trick of lighting and longing. The audience sees perfection, the performer sees the cracks. For years she hid them well, but under every shimmer of success lay the pulse of an unspoken truth, that beauty can be both a crown and a cage. She learned early that survival depends on performance, and for Charlize, every performance was an act of confession, disguised as cinema. The noir of her life was never about crime, it was about consequence. Every choice, to forgive, to forget, to fight, left its shadow. The camera adored her, but it never understood her. How could it? The lens only captures the surface. It cannot see the quiet tremor beneath. Now imagine the final shot. A woman walking alone down a rain-slicked boulevard, coat collar turned up against the wind. Her heels echo on the pavement, steady, deliberate, defiant. The neon reflections ripple in the puddles, spelling out her name for one last frame before dissolving into darkness. She doesn't look back. She doesn't need to. The past is not behind her. It walks beside her, like a silent companion. The tragedy of her life was not what happened to her, but what she had to become to survive it. And yet, there's beauty in that tragedy, the kind of beauty that doesn't fade, because it's carved into the soul.